Bis- Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Engage Religious Education. Why faith-based schools are ideal spaces for religious identity formation. This session is for educators, school leaders, board members, and parents, and anyone else that is interested in providing beneficial education for our children. And let's get started. We'll start with Al-Fatiha. We'll open us up with Al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. We ask Allah to guide us and to protect us and guide us as we receive the knowledge that He has in store for us. Amen. Well, tonight, everyone, we are in store for a great treat. The engaged religious education is a topic that is so needed and so relevant to what we want for our children. And so I'm excited about tonight's topic. But before we get started, I want to give you an introduction of what my camera is going to do here. Uh-oh. Hang on just a second. Let me see what we're doing here. Um, fine. Okay, it's supposed to. Okay, there we are. Okay. So Islamic well, I wanted to tell you a little bit about um, our ISLA. I want to tell you about ISLA, and then tell you about what's going on with ISLA, what's coming up with ISLA for the next few weeks. All right. So with ISLA, we want to tell you about who we are. And ISLA is Islamic Schools League of America. We are connecting. We've been connecting Islamic school professionals to share knowledge, ideas, and resources for over 25 years. That's what we've been doing as an organization. Um, in the Islamic schools, we have 420 full-time Islamic schools, and in those full-time Islamic schools, there are 100,000 Muslims students, and there are 9,000 educating professional people working in those schools or working with those schools. What ISLA does research, resources, and relationships. And if you ask me, relationship is one of the most important things that we do. Um, we are going to talk about I'm Patricia Salahuddin, and I have been a member of ISLA since 2010 or 2009. I've been here a long time, and I have worked with ISLA in the capacity of board member for those many years. Now, what we're going to do not right now is talk about the upcoming events that we have, and just take a few minutes to do that, and then we get into our presentation. So we have coming up the next event. Actually, tomorrow we have classroom management in Islamic schools that will be done tomorrow at April the 22nd, and that's a 5-session event, a 5-session workshop. So it's from April the 22nd to May the 20th. And our presenter is, let me move our faces back out of the way so we can see. Our presenter is Asma El Badawi, and she's going to give us information on how to manage our classrooms uh, in an manage our classroom in an Islamic perspective. So the If you were planning on joining this session, if you haven't joined already, you have until noon April tomorrow, noon tomorrow to do so. So that's the first session. Trying to move my computer here. Um, the next Islamic Research Symposium, and that is done on Saturday and Sunday, April 25th and 26th. Our co-chair for this event is our Dr. Nadim Miman and Dr. Seema Imam, and that is April the 25th and 26th, 2026. That is the ISLA Research Symposium, and if you're interested in sponsoring that, you may do so. Just check the QR code or go to the website and you can become a sponsor for the symposium. The next event is May the 13th, and the event is for monthly administrators. Um, it's called the monthly admin meeting, and you have to be a member to join this meeting. And if you're interested, go to our website or check this QR code and become a member for this particular event. And that's for May the 13th, and it's at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The next event is professional development, and that one is going to take place August the 3rd through the 7th, and it's morning and evening, or morning and afternoon event. We haven't set up the registration yet. It will be starting soon, so get ready for that. This is for staff development to get you ready for school. Now I know school hasn't even ended yet, and we're talking about school starting again. So don't worry, we will have our summer. Don't worry. All right, the next one is leadership retreat, and that is a fantastic event. It's going to be again at the Dinette Center in Laham, Maryland, and this event is a yearly event, and this is when we have the our in this event we have research resource and resource and
relationships.
yeah. We have a lot of I don't know why I got stuck on that, because that's one of the best part about the retreat is the relationship and all the wonderful people that we learn, that we get to know back when we go to participate in the retreat. Okay, now the next thing is our social media. If you're interested in keeping up with ISLA, with all of the different things that we're doing, we have several ways you can do that. We're on Facebook, we have Instagram, we're on YouTube, and we have WhatsApp, and we also have, you may join our Google group IECN. Now, the last but not least, now we get to what we really came here for, and that is our presenter, Sister Afeefa Syeed. I want to say here that Sister Afeefa is one of my favorite educators. When I first got to know about her, it was a long time ago, and I was so impressed with the description of how she taught, how her school was run, the kind of things that they did, and it was just such an impressive, exciting event to learn that, because that's something that was so special to me. And then she came to presentations for the retreat. She would do presentations for us, and anytime I got an opportunity to read anything about her, I would do so. So I'm just really excited to have her here. And I am going to read what the bio said. Afeefa Syeed is a cultural anthropologist with nearly 30 years of experience supporting nonprofits, government agencies, and international organizations in applying cultural context and religious literacy to programs and policy. Her work focuses on religious identity and civic engagement, international affairs, and innovative education. In 2024, she founded the Center for Innovative Religious Education, CIRE, an incubation hub dedicated to developing dynamic curricula, promoting engaged teaching, and cultivating an integrated worldview. I am so excited to introduce to you Sister Afeefa. We are so happy to have you. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum.
Salam. Oh my goodness, Sister Patricia, my heart is full just just being around you whenever I can. So I really appreciate it. And I think we're in a mutual fan club for sure because you've been one of the pioneers that has launched many of our inspirations and aspirations, alhamdulillah, for the past few decades. So alhamdulillah for you and for many of the others that are joining today that have been at it for a while and have had the ups and downs and the ins and outs and all of that comes with this very special work that we're all involved in with education. So alhamdulillah for community and for sure alhamdulillah for relationships. I think, without that, a lot of us would have kind of, sunk back into or kind of ducked out of this work because it is tough. It is, it's hard. Um, and we know it's rewarding in the ways that we find rewarding, but having each other and hearing from each other and also, frankly, knowing that you're not alone in what you're thinking about, especially when people say, well, that can't be done, or, that's just, we've never done it that way, right? Or saying something like, um, it's not going to work because that's not who we are, and so on and so forth. So all of that for the past many decades, hearing that, but then having people say, no, 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 let's try it, or saying, we do need something different, or we do need to think about what we're doing in a different way, in a different light. So whether it was Dr. Dawood Tawhidi from way back when, whether it was, so many others that through the years inspired and kind of rejuvenated us in this space. And I think I probably speak for most of us. Some of us that started in this space of education weren't really educators. We were parents, perhaps. And I know I started getting into education because I had young sons and I wanted something different for them. And our origin story for the school that I was a part of, had the honor to be a part of, which was Al-Fatih Academy here in Virginia, it did really start because we wanted a space, not just a Muslim. We even said we don't just want an Islamic school. We really wanted a space that we could create to have all of this come together as far as identity and culture and everything else, but to really build a place where our hearts and our spirits of who we are, um, as learners and as teachers could grow. So alhamdulillah for that, as an initial blessing of what we were trying to do. And then it kind of spread from that. And, what I'm sharing today and what I've been sharing over the years is really just more about how do we plant those seeds in one another. We can use big old words and interesting phrases and jargon and all of that. But at the end of the day, it's about, reinvigorating ourselves, and that the word innovation and innovative and all of that can mean many different things to many people. But I think, what I'm really interested in is seeing, well, we always go back to our why. Why are we doing this? And when we go back to our why, then we start to really think about, oh yeah, there is a way and a method and an approach that perhaps we can learn more about or be more engaged in that we haven't been for some reason or the other. So that's really, where I'm coming from today. And what I'm going to be sharing, some of you that have kind of, been a part of my journey, would have been, a part of hearing some of this from very different, from the earlier times that I was also a part of it. And as some of you are a part of that. And it's kind of developed over the years and become something that I think, when we talk with each other about it, it gets a little bit more and more developed further or enhanced or however you want to see it. Let me just do a quick check. Can you see my screen, which is the title screen? Okay, awesome. I'm also very excited that we have folks in our group today in sharing space that come from teachers, being admin, being board members, I think also parents. So that really helps to have a conversation that's more robust, and hopefully something that is, interactive in the sense that I don't like to talk a lot. I don't like to hear my voice for sure. So I'm hoping that as I talk, and then present and kind of just put something out there, that you'll respond, as some of us say, as the spirit moves you, but also in the sense of, what is something that, if for sure, if it doesn't make sense, but also if it's something that resonates. So whether you're in the mood to put it into the chat, I'm grateful for that. If you want to just put your hand up, and I think Lisa's going to help moderate that. Put your hand up, the icons, or just, I just use my actual hand. Sometimes I can't find the icon, so put your hand up. And I just learned from somebody the other day who's, how we say, raise your hand. So she says, straighten your elbows, which means put your hands way up rather than just kind of timidly pretending that you have something to say. So I'm going to use that from now on, is just put your elbows straight. Yeah, so that's the spirit of, I think, the conversation that I'd like to have today. And I know for some of us, it's the end of the day, and it's been a long day. But anyway, inshallah, may Allah put benefit in our gathering. May Allah put benefit in what we learn from one another. And if there's anything that is at fault, then it's definitely my shortcoming. And I would appreciate you calling me out on it. That would be the best way for me to learn as well. So what are we talking about? Why is this even titled? And I was joking with Shaza before. I wanted to make a more snazzy title, and I just didn't have the bandwidth to do it. But what are we even talking about when we say engaged? And why is that a word that I'm using? So I want to start by asking you to look at this and tell me what you see. And you could just, if you don't mind unmuting, you can, or at least if you don't mind that they do that, if you want to just unmute and say, what do you see here?
Or did you want people to put it in the chat?
Either way, yeah, that's fine.
Path.
I don't see anything on my screen. What is am I the only one?
Uh-oh.
Footsteps, actually.
Make sure you have that tab at the top that says Afeefa Syeed screen.
Okay, now I see it now. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so somebody said footsteps. I think Roger, you said that. And then I'm hearing people saying desert, pathway, a journey. Ooh, okay, we're getting deep fast. Footsteps going upward. Yeah. Sand dune in the desert. Oh, yeah. One person traveling. Nice. Yes. So keep it coming. I want to tell you, I took this picture last week. I took a 7-day walk through the Sahara Desert, where we had just things that we were carrying, and we walked for 7 days. It's in Morocco, but on the border of Morocco and Algeria. And yes, it's a moon in the sky. Nicely done, Mr. Rashida. So this is a picture of my footsteps as I walked down from the dune. And then I was able to look back and I saw the moon, so I took this picture. But my whole reason of going to the desert was to really find a space and a time. I do this very often. I take a retreat for myself, and I wanted to really rethink and re-understand and recalibrate myself on many different levels and for many reasons. But as I was looking at my footprints and my footsteps in the desert, I was thinking about, well, what does this mean for me when I look at this? And then also, as an educator, and as educators, all of us together, what is the significance of something like this? And it helped me to kind of tell the story for myself. And then I, thought about sharing it with you, and you're the first group I've talked to since I came out of the desert. So I'm not sure if I'll be entirely coherent today, but it's really, it was a lot of learning for me from the desert. And we know that, subhanAllah, some of the greatest teachers that we've had, whether they're prophets or they're other, masters of connection to the divine, have come from spaces like this, which are empty, which are vast, and which are really deep. So when I was thinking about this, I started to think about how, as educators, what does this reflect for us, or what does it reflect for me, and then for us as educators? And really what I was thinking about was, it's not just the footstep itself, it's the print. And many times we say, we follow people's footsteps, or we follow in people's footsteps, and that teachers are there to create footsteps for the students to follow, right? And that's it's a way of kind of thinking about teacher-student relationship. But then I've started to think more about, well, what are we looking at, and what is the connection to being an educator and a teacher? And I thought about the idea that the way that the greater scholars were taught was in a very connected and integrated way, right? We know some of the greatest, role models we have were proficient in poetry, math, in astronomy, in language, in everything all at once, because they were taught in that way. It was all a connection. So the imprint that they had on themselves was a very holistic and integrated imprint. It wasn't just, things that were segregated out. They understood the meaning of what they were learning because it was something that made sense to them, but it was also relevant to them. And they also took ownership of that learning. And it became something that, instead of just a footstep that they're following into, it became a print into their hearts, into their minds, into their psyche. So it's not just the footstep itself, it's the imprint that we're making. And I'll tell you, I don't have a picture, I have a video of it that I can't play right on today, but I made sujood, and I took my hands off, and I got up from sujood in the sand dune, and I just started timing how long it took for my sujood hands to disappear in the sand. What do you think? How long do you think it took? I timed it. It was about a minute, where the wind came and my hands were gone. My handprints were gone. So nobody will know, that I prayed there. There's nothing left there. But the imprint that it left on me, which means that it is a reverse print on me, is what really was captured in my heart, and that I carry through, is that sujood that I made there had a significance to me, and it didn't have anything to do with what was going on otherwise for other people. So when I think about footprints, or I think about footsteps like this, and okay, here we go. I'm trying to get my mouse to work. So as educators, what we can think about as a footprint or an imprint is a scientific fact. So we can teach it as a fact. There's a motion and there's force, right? So it's science. A footprint is also a marker on the earth of history and geography. People can understand when you put a print down or a footstep, where is it taking place? When is it taking place? And what's the history behind and before and after that print that we leave on the ground? It's also a reflection of how to observe and use language. So I'm here explaining to you my experience or my connection to my experience there, but I'm using language. I'm learning how to communicate. A footprint is also an acknowledgement of the self. That's my print. That's my foot. That's my self that is leaving that print. So it's an acknowledgement of who I am in connection to what is greater than me, but it's also a connection to my self-worth and my who I am as a person. And then also a footprint is a realization of the power of impact. When you make a footprint on something, you have shifted the sand in this case, but things have shifted. And that footprint or footstep you're taking and putting an imprint on the ground and on earth has an impact. So what does that mean? When I walk through the desert, yeah, my prints are going to be gone. But when I walk through the earth, and Allah Ta'ala has told us and asked us to walk gently on the earth, right? And that is a very specific phraseology that he uses in the Quran. And why is that? And it is a gentleness, and we're in the month of April where we have Earth Day, and we talk about walking gently on the earth in a way that not to harm it. But what does that mean in terms of how we are as individuals, whether we're the teacher and the humility that we have as a teacher, or we're the learner and the understanding that what I'm gaining from my teacher is something that is going to be imprinted on my heart, and then the power of impact as well. So maybe if we're not walking gently on the earth, how that's affecting the earth as well, and understanding that the notion of footprints themselves can be a tool to use with students and with others, and to give young minds a reason to explore. So the idea of education being not just that we're teaching the facts, or that we're teaching one thing after another as a list of what was being taught, but it's that connectivity to what is being taught. It's that understanding that imprint that we're leaving as teachers is going to be long lasting, and it is going to be something that is going to be a part of who they are as individuals. And we know that we're considered as educators murabbi, which is nurturers and not just as teachers. But it's a way of understanding for me, and that's why I wanted to share this reflection with you all today. It sets us up for understanding why teaching in a way that is more integrated or holistic or connected is something that is going to have more of an impact on everybody around us than not doing it that way or thinking that it's not needed to be that way. So this is my case for integration, which means bring all the stuff together in terms of how and what we teach, but it's also what I'm trying to express in terms of what we can leave on our learners and on our students in the way that we do that. So that's the picture I have there. But then this is what I'm concerned about. And this is the other part of the desert, which, as you can see, is very dry and very parched. And of course, the Sahara, if you know your geography and history, used to be the bottom of a ocean, because when it was Pangea, it was an ocean. So when we were walking through the desert, we were also walking on the ocean floor. So that was a subhanallah moment for me over and over and over again. But it also I thought about the fact that when we sometimes walk through our education journeys, whether it's in a school or any other context, sometimes we're creating parched spaces. And sometimes we are walking through parched spaces because there's no enlivenment of the learning. There's no like excitement for sure, but there's also just a dryness to why and how we are pursuing education as a field, but also as teaching. And we're just trying to get from point A to point B. And when we do that in education, in our schools and in our connections with children especially, that dryness does not leave any print. It does not leave anything that is going to be beneficial because we're just kind of moving through it. What it might do, and this is what I ended up with, because you can see I was barefoot, I ended up with a lot of calluses on my feet because it was just, at one point, it was just, let's get, we have to get from point A to point B, and we just have to make it through. And that's exhausting, but it also left a print on me, which was painful. So then the more I was able to understand, no, our walking through life overall, our walking through our calling as educators, as murabbis, has to be so intentional and meaningful that we don't get that sunburnt feet. We don't get those calluses on our SOLES and SOULS because of this hurriedness we have, or because of the sense that we are just trying to get something over with. So we have to take steps that are a little bit more careful. We have to take steps and make those imprints that, will take more time and more conscientiousness towards it, and will also help us understand why is so important to the connection as well. So I wanted to think about this as our tools today as we're having this conversation, and also think about why we may not feel comfortable in that way. I'll just pause here. Anybody have any feedback on my metaphor and my analogy? Do we have any English teachers that are going to give me some grief on how it's the connection may not be as clear. And I'll just say it was, it's a desert connection that I made, and I hope everybody has that opportunity to have that experience at one time or another. But this was, this is how I feel like what we bring into something is what we take out. And that concertedness is what I'm really going to be thinking about as we talk today, inshallah. So what does this mean for us?
Well, I just want to say that Sister Afeefa, that Sister Rashida,
yes.
very lovely thought in the chat. She mentioned, or Rashida, if you want to come on mute, she mentions your sujood is recorded eternally in another plane, and those grains of sand will bear witness to your sujood. It's just that we can no longer see it. The moments move forward, but the imprint is there, albeit invisible. Sometimes, actually, oftentimes, that is analogous to the impact that we have on each other, mashallah.
I mean, exactly. And I think part of that, saying that, is also saying that, we don't think sometimes that we leave an imprint on students or on young people around us, right? And this is just exactly the case of we do. And the imprints that we leave that we cannot see. right? And if some of you have been in this business for a while, you know you've had students come back to you after a while and they'll say, do you, I remember when, and they'll remember something that you didn't even recognize was going to be part of their, carousel of memories. But for sure, we leave those imprints. And I think that's the important piece of what you're saying also about the internalization. I mean, I didn't feel sad not seeing my sujood prints, right? I didn't feel like I didn't do it. And exactly, what you're saying is that it was recorded in the compass that I have in my heart of being connected to Allah Ta'ala. And it wasn't even a point of that, we're trying to prove that we're doing something. So that's another piece to this as well, is that when we're making imprints on individuals, on each other, whatever it is, Allah knows best what those imprints are. But the fact that we have those relationships, like you were talking about, Sister Patricia, those relationships, some of them are, continuous, consistent, and ongoing, and some of them are, you pass by somebody, and that stranger imprint that has been made is enough. And Allah knows best, how we grow from those as well. So yes, beautifully said, Sister Rashida, and I concur fully that I think, that is how we, I think as educators also recognize the imprints we make on others as well. Yeah, I think that's a good reminder for that. Okay, let me get out of this chat. Okay, so I just wanted very briefly, some of us have this conversation about the why, and we talk about, well, what is it about teaching religious education? So in our case, most of you are coming from Muslim schools. I have this conversation actually across the board. In fact, some of these things that I'm sharing with you, I have worked with Christian, Jewish, Hindu schools even. So we've been going across the spectrum talking about religious education. So that's why some of this language sounds like it's more generic, and it's on purpose, because we're really talking about how religious education in any context needs to be a certain type of education, needs to be a certain type of approach to education and a religious education, rather than just, in our Muslim schools or in our other parochial schools. So here's some, facts and rationale. Religious education fosters the understanding of global context. Religious education contributes to positive adolescent mental wellness. It's a protective mechanism. I just kind of bolded it out for you. And I really appreciate this one here, which says it helps the students engage perspectives, tackling critical questions. These are all, just general preferences, meaning they're not Muslim scholars, but it's important to think about it, because as we're in this world and as we talk about religiosity, we talk about religious scholarship, etc., we have to talk about how this affects us all in the field of religious education. And again, we had this presentation at AAR, the American Academy of Religion, and they were the audience, the people that we were connecting with on this topic, were really excited that we could take principles and guidelines between all religions and talk about how religious education can have that spectrum. And here's more, which is that faith-based schools, again, this is because it's a general conversation about these kinds of schools, are ideal places for meaning making. And I think sometimes what happens on some of these topics, many of us that work in this space think, yeah, of course, that's the reason we have Muslim school or a religious school. But the reason I wanted to kind of highlight and pause on this is because I don't think we articulate it enough, and I don't think we articulate it correctly sometimes when we're talking about why we have a school, right? So we've had this conversation for many years. Is it an Islamic versus a Muslim school? Is there a difference? Does it matter? But the idea of the fact that we want schools that we are making meaning, it's not just because we want to raise Muslims. It has to have more to it than that. I mean, I've been in this now for the last 30 years and seeing schools start and seeing schools go, and or just education. I've done the whole gamut myself. I've homeschooled. We had a cooperative. We've had all sorts of different mechanisms. But the idea that meaning making is essential, and if we're not able to show that we are making, that we're creating those kinds of spaces in our schools, then we really have to say, what are we doing? And we'll get a little bit more into that, but I think this is very important. And you can see these 3 bullet points that come from that. It's the formation of identity, but it's about, religious identity, which is confident, and for students to be able to engage with themselves, their own religious community, and others without fear, and then root the civic and moral reasoning so that they're able to be contributing to society in a way that is fully grounded and has a spiritual connection to it. So it's not just I can, recite the ayahs of the Quran that are connected to this topic, which is great. Nobody's saying that shouldn't be done. But what more about that relationship with the Quran are we talking about? When I talk to students about the walking Qurans that were, enslaved people from Africa that had come to South America and then to North America as well, what does that mean? It means the relationship they had with the Quran was such that even though they were forced to not even recite it, they had it in their hearts in such a way that they would sew it into their clothes, or they would, have a relationship with the Quran because they understood it to be something much more meaningful than just something that they memorized. So that kind of idea of what it means to be connected is really important. And then the fact that if we're doing this in our schools, then we're giving them not just the tools, but the capacity to engage and the capacity to be much more broadly understood by others, and then for themselves to know who they are as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So some of you might have seen this. This is one of my favorite little graphics we created at our school very early on. And I asked students, I said, well, what do you think, you our school name is Al-Fatih Academy, what should an AFA student be like, right? And we came up with these, it's a lot of words, but I like representing it in this way because the idea really was, look at your mind, it's intentional, right? Look at your smile, it's kind. Look at your pockets, it's generous. So this is very visual, but if we're looking at what we want to have our students be, we need to start from that and work backwards. So if this is the student that we want to leave our school, and of course, not everything all at once, but to the extent that this is an aspiration, then how do we work towards that, right? And maybe, in your school, you'll have less of these or more of something else or whatever it is. But it has to be that intentional conversation about what do we want to produce or what do we want to nurture, because that's a big piece of this, which is students many times already have these qualities that we think we have to kind of drill into them, but it's already there. So how do we nurture those qualities? Or how do we help them understand that they have challenges, that they may have challenges to practicing these qualities? So anybody see anything that's missing or anything that stands out to you as being more important than anything else? You can put it in the chat, or you can think about what else you might change from that or shift away. But I know I get excited because this really is visual. If you look at it, the feet are balanced, which means you're standing in a balanced way, etc. So it's it was a really great exercise to do with students as well. Okay, so in this case, let me see if I can minimize. Nope. Okay. Oh, I did it. All right. So in this case, I wanted to sort of lay out to you a framework that we've been working on again for many years. Since I've been working with these other schools and other religious affiliated connections. These kind of 7 nodes of a compass. If we think of the divine in the center, of course, as where everything comes from, what do we want to do when we do in our schools that has meaning and that creates that meaning-making environment? So we kind of distilled all of this into these. And as you can see, we have the values and beliefs, we have intentional action, relationship, we have awe and wonder, self-knowledge, self-worth, meaning, transformative experiences. So we kind of, as we were thinking about all the things that we want to do in our schools, in our education frameworks, these kind of stood out as those. So these are dimensions of intentional religious education and literacy. Why are we talking about intentional? Again, I want to go back to what I started with, was if we're not intentional, then we end up with a school, or we end up with a program, or whatever it is, and it's like that, parched earth image, which is, it's great, and it'll do something, but it won't necessarily nurture in the way that will let something grow, or will let something flourish. And it'll be even more difficult for us as individuals to pursue it. So I want to take this and then I juxtapose it onto this. So now we have Allah Ta'ala in the middle, and we've called, it's the divine, but now we're becoming much more specific about what we're talking about for our Muslim schools. And now what is the alignment? What's the alignment with those 7 kind of dimensions that I've talked about, and how do we align our connection to that? Sorry, what did I click on? Yeah, how do we align ourselves on that? So so the values and beliefs, for example, we create space and time, intentional action, relationship, awe and wonder. So I don't want to go through each one of these, because I am going to go through each one of these, but I wanted to show it to you all together. And then say, well, how do we take this into our education framework, and what does that look like? But again, if you look at it, these are kind of general, they're kind of broad, but then we want to break them down. And so I'm going to ask now, as we go through the rest of it, what do these mean to you, right? And what do they mean to your school? So as you're thinking about it, the questions will come up as well. Okay, let's see. Okay, any questions on this before I do move on? Or do any of the words not make sense? Or do they not, if they're not hitting quite right, if you want a little bit more explanation of any of them, then I can do that. Or as we go through them, you can let me know what you think, or let me know if there's something, if you need some clarification. So the first one that we have, okay. Oops, okay, here we go, I think. Sorry. You can see the screen, right? It says Allah in the middle. Okay.
Did you need the participants here to be thinking of anything, or jotting down anything?
Well, I was just trying to go to the next slide, actually, but let's see. My slides aren't moving is a problem.
You've got a sticky slide day today.
Yeah. I don't think I did.
Dr. Patricia found on the bottom. There's like an arrow on the bottom, and you click it. If I remember watching Patricia.
So do what? You want me to do what?
No, nothing. I was just mentioning. Yeah, and you could stop what Abir was mentioning. You could stop sharing and sharing again. Sometimes that
Oh, I stopped sharing. I'm not sharing anymore.
No, for Sister Afeefa.
Oh, okay. Oh, and share back again. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I think I might have skipped. Okay, here we go. Back again, right? Okay. I think we're moving, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we're moving.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Abir, for that. All right. So, so the first one is values and beliefs. So I think, what I was thinking was I have these questions for us for each of these. So if you want to jot down, or if you want to share, whatever is easier for you, kind of the idea of, for example, values and beliefs. What opportunities do our students have to process their values? So some of you might think, well, we're Islamic values, so what do we need to talk about values for? But I think just spend a little bit of time thinking about Do we have different values in the school, right? Even if we're all Muslim, is there something about the values and beliefs that is different? Is there something about the diversity that we have in our schools that this question would come up in? Of course, do our students support the mission of the school? How does our schedule, curriculum, and disciplinary code align with the school values? Do we create space and time for students to live out their beliefs from a variety of traditions in personal, communal ways? So you can pick any of these questions for this dimension of values and beliefs, and think about, in your context, which one would you like to answer? And as you're thinking about it and kind of jotting it down, the idea of this is really thinking about our beliefs about the realm of the spiritual affect our social, ethical, political, and other selves, right? And that's, again, you could say, well, we all have, Muslim values, but is there something to that is there a diversity for sure, but is there also space for interpretation that might be different? And is that something your school is thinking about? So if anybody wants to respond to the question out loud, I'm happy to hear that. So I'll give you a minute, and if you want to think about which one you want to answer, you can do that, and then we can
I
come
can
back.
do the
If somebody
first
wants to
one.
volunteer.
I
Sorry?
can do the first one. What opportunities do our students have to process their values?
Okay.
As our school is based in a masjid, so they have the opportunities, like their family values, I will say, is to pray on time and learn how to
Mm-hmm.
pray properly. So they get that opportunity because we are in the masjid, so we pray together, and then the teachers have the ability to correct them if they are not praying the right way. We check how they are doing the wudu, and for the younger kids. And I will say that is the opportunity for them,
Mm-hmm.
for their values and beliefs.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because you mentioned the schools in the masjid. So I know that when we started our school, it's been about 28 years now, we decided to separate from the masjid. And even though I was on the board of the masjid, we were very, connected to the masjid as well, but we decided to separate it. And it was for a value of saying, well, masjid has people coming and going, we don't know how to control that, but also now that we were separate, we could have our own, level of khutbah, for example, or topics, or we could, so our value of the independence in that sense was more of a priority than the fact that the masjid would do exactly what you're saying, which would give the students a masjid connection, right?
We are
So
a
there's
new
a
school,
diversity in that
so
approach.
it's our second year. So
Hmm.
yeah, so we still have to be at the masjid, but
Of course.
in future we are thinking of having like a proper building, and
Yeah.
like you are saying, have, because when you are in the masjid you are bound to some
Yes.
rules and schedule of the masjid as well, so it will
Right.
give us more independence, but right now we are not in that capacity to open up in a separate place.
Sure. And that makes entire sense. And again, we have to do what we can do, and we evolve through that.
Yeah.
But I also know some people prefer to be in the masjid, right? For
Yeah.
those for some other reasons, because they value certain things differently. So this is an interesting kind of, which way would we go? But to your point, you recognize it as a growing, pain, or a way to kind of evolve through that. So that's
Mm.
great, because that means you've, thought about it as a value of its in and of itself.
Yes.
And it's obviously not that, we don't value being in the masjid, in terms of our context, but it is a specific, very intentional conversation about what we want to get out of it.
Yeah.
In fact, we choose people to give khutbah, and we have a guideline for them, like what words you can't use and what topics you can do and so on. Whereas in the masjid, you wouldn't be able to. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And that's very relevant to this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move to the next one. And if somebody else wants to share for the next one as well. This is very odd why it comes back to. Sorry, everybody. I don't know why it comes back to not being able to share.
Yeah, and a couple of nice comments in the chat regarding plus and minus of Masajid. One by Rashida, the deeper values associated with Salah and Wudu that could be perhaps explored. Whether I am assuming whether it's at the masjid or just in any version of schooling. And then Abir Katovich is mentioning, I worked in schools inside and outside of Masajid, and my heart is with those in the Masajid. Yes, there are obstacles, but there is great barakah. Personal opinion. So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and that, like I said, it's not so much that we're debating it, but we're talking about how do we create that value approach, right? In an intentional way. Okay, I think I'm back on, but I can't tell now.
We're seeing your values and beliefs screen.
Oh, good. Okay, great. All right, so we've got values and beliefs. What's next? So the next one on the values and beliefs. So the next one is the action one, right? So what are we talking about? Oh, intentional action. So what does our, so intentional action, of course, is about how does that play a role in our schools? What does that look like? Intentional action is thinking about things, but also everything you do in the school has an intention connected to it. Is that, that sounds like a lot. It sounds like almost an impossible situation, but it is important to understand that intentionality is going to be something that is very critical. So does our school's community service program encourage reflection on the service students perform? Do faculty members model service for students? So in this representation is some of the intentional action is connected to action itself, which is service. But the idea is, how does or would a commitment to intentional action affect our curriculum? So let me just ask that question is, how do you define maybe intentionality in your school? And is there an example you can give of what part of your school, maybe the day, so it doesn't have to be the broader part, what part of the day can you describe in a way that shows that there's intention? And of course, we're talking about Nia, but we're talking about intentionality in the day. If anybody wants to think about how to share something like that. And I'll just, while you're thinking about it, I'll give you this picture here. This is in the foyer of our school, and we call it the intention tree. And so these are intentions that teachers have made for their year. So they've created an intention for what they're going to do for the year, and then we put them up on this intention tree so students can see them, so teachers can see for each other, but then also parents can come, and any visitors can come and see what do these teachers have as part of their intention for the year. Now, it's very broad, but this helps to explain and to kind of understand the idea of intentionality being something, being something active as well. So let me see if there's anybody wants to share one intentional action that your school takes now that you would want to share with us.
Amar is sharing that they do recycling programs as a Khalifa fil Ard. MashaAllah.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's great. And you've connected it as not just something you're doing that's good, but connecting it to the concept of Khalifa as well. So I think this, the idea behind this is the intentionality so much so that the students should be able to see it and feel it. And so, and you're also articulating it. So whatever's on the wall, and sometimes, you know, you walk around in places and people have just put things up on the wall because they want to put things up on the wall. But then really the question should be, why is that on the wall, right? Why is that picture on the wall? What is the intention behind it? Or for that matter, you walk into a classroom with very young children and everything is way up high, and you're thinking, why would you, how would you think that that would be okay, that if you have young children that should be at eye level, etc. But the intentionality part of it is just walking around the building even and saying, well, why is this and why is that? Because students actually, we know they think about these things a lot, and they do actually question. Even if you won't hear them, they internalize everything around them. And then if they don't, you can actually bring that up and say, because of our intentionality, this is why we have done this. Because of our intentionality, because we have, the connection to Nia as being such a strong part of our value system, this is why we're doing this. And then you have buy-in from people. I know we have almost yearly, but maybe not quite as yearly, the debate on the uniform. So you have a bunch of students that say we should have no uniform. A bunch of students, most of them say that we should have no uniform. So then we say, okay, why don't we get together and why don't you talk about it? And talk about what was the intention for having a uniform. And usually by the end of all of that, they all agree that, in uniform is actually important. But the idea behind that process is really, really critical as well. Okay. So if anybody else has something to share, please do. Otherwise, I'm going to move to the next one. Okay, relationship. Yes, Sister Patricia, were you going to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say there were some comments in the chat. We have Salat that out loud for grades pre-K I guess pre-K 3, so they can learn what to say. And then the other one said the intention tree is a great idea. Sending and serving food to the local homeless shelters is a very humbling experience for students. So
Yes,
those are the two
exactly.
comments that were there.
Yeah. I don't know if any of you do this, but we have had for many years something we call Market Day, where students can sell items. So usually a class sponsors it and they can sell items to raise money. But the way that we created this intentionality around that was that they are learning about a need that they either their class has, or you mentioned about the shelter. We have a relationship with our local shelter, so they make lunch. Every class makes lunch for the shelters once a month, and they have to buy the ingredients for that. So it's sandwiches, etc. So they need to raise money for that. So they have a market day where they make things to sell. The money goes to buying the items, and then the items are then they go and make those, and then they have the delivery to the shelter. So it was, when you think about how the whole system works, they are learning economics, they're learning social impact, they're also learning a lot of math, and they're also learning about the other parts of the curriculum that are all connected to this one event, which is a market day. But we clearly explain all of that, articulate that, because the idea is that they need to understand, they as students, but then as the community, that we're not just trying to raise some money for something or something random or something kind of not considered, but it's a whole process of that. Yes.
And then Wafa normally has a hand raised. I'm not sure if you have a question or a comment. And if you did a mistake, that's fine too.
Sorry?
Do you have a comment to make, Wafa?
Yeah, our school also, they take action. The kids sometimes, like October sock, and they collect socks for the community. And also we have one day, all the school, they gather in Ramadan. We have 3 boxes. They put charity and they put for wealth to send it to Africa. And also there is another action. Kids, they drive, like they giving food to the food bank. This is all this action by student.
Yes.
And the school encourage them.
MashaAllah. Yeah, that's great. And I think part of it is the actions themselves. So that's intentional action. And then connecting it to why we're doing it and connecting it to all of that is going to be very important. So this is related to this next piece I want to talk about, which is relationship. And it is, exactly what Sister Patricia was saying earlier, relationships in terms of how we create them, how we nurture them, and how they impact, what we're doing. But it is, again, to articulate the idea of relationship. And the idea that relationship doesn't just mean, who your friends are. It really means how we're connected in different ways. Let me just pause. Lisa, is my video on? Can you see me or?
No, we can't see you at the moment. We can see the screen, but not you.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. Yeah, I think it has something to do with my phone, but I'll try to figure this out. I think.
Did you want to go on, or do you want me to read the next slide on relationships?
Okay, can you hear me okay and see me okay? Okay, thank you. All right, so let me move a little bit quicker because I am having my tech issues. So relationship really is about, how do we talk about it, but also how do we do it, and what is it, and why do we do it, and why is it so fundamental? So of course, we're talking about relationship with the student, with the teacher. We're talking about relationship with each other. We're talking about relationship with the parents, have all of it, right? And of course, paramount, and you remember what's in the center of that compass is relationship with Allah Ta'ala. That's going to be, all of it's going to be fundamental. So part of this is, how do we build pieces in our school that relationship becomes a component of that? This is a picture I wanted to share with you. This is every Martin Luther King Day, when we have day of service, our students all bring in cookies and we make these plates and we go to neighbors that are around the school and we deliver these cookies. So it's a nice thing to do, neighborly thing, but there's a lot of conversation we have with students about relationship through this activity, right? It's not just a nice thing to do. We talk about, why do we have neighbors, what is the responsibility to neighbors, et cetera. And then they also recognize, and many of them, feel like they may be sheltered. They may not have that opportunity to go be with strangers, but now we're doing it in a safe way, that you can actually go and present yourself to people that you don't know, and create that bond, but also that neighbors means that you take care of each other. So that's an example of how we build a relationship, and how students are how we model that whole process so that they are also connected to that. So this connects to, how do we give them tools? How do we give them tools to understand themselves? How do we give them tools to understand how to be with one another? And how do we give them tools to understand their capacity in the larger world? So whether it's bullying, whether or not we have a harassment policy in place, because that's all part of the relationship, and even the diversity of what's happening in our school. So, you may have different madahib, families from different madahib in the school. How do we treat that as a relationship, as part of the teaching? And how do we treat that as something that is honored, and not, that's a challenge in and of itself? And that's going to be something very critical in terms of how we look at relationship in conjunction with all the other pieces that we have. And then some of it is relationships we want and we nurture, and some of it is relationships that are difficult and we want to figure out how to manage them. So that's also part of it, as well. So I'm going to keep moving. If anybody wants to share, just let me know. But we'll just keep at it. So meaning and purpose, again, this is very fundamental, right? It also is kind of like values, and it's also about values and beliefs, but meaning and purpose is letting the idea of meaning making. How do we help students understand that there are bigger issues in the world and their life, and how do we give them that space to reflect on it? What do they need to know in order to be able to connect to meaning? And why is it that, a lot of our students, young Muslim students, in fact, in some of the schools will talk about how they don't know why they're Muslim, or they don't understand, what they're being taught, because it's being taught in a way that's very separated out. But we want them to ask those questions and be very purposeful in what they are learning as well. And that's hard. That's very hard, and I recognize that. We don't always want to be the ones to have difficult conversations, or open that space. But when we create meaning, which means we create a space for students to really engage, then they're going to ask questions, or they're going to create, they're going to be part of creating meaning, because they're trying to understand what's happening around them. But do we create that space? Do we give them that opportunity? Do we let them feel like, oh, okay, we're not just trying to get through a curriculum and get to the end of the unit, but if there is an issue, there's a concern, there's something that's happening, that they are connected to that in what they do as well. And that's really critical in terms of what is something that they will be doing for themselves. So this is an example of that I wanted to share with you. These are critical questions that we've come up with as we look at religious education. So we have our Islamic studies standards, for example, in terms of teaching religion. And so we come up, with this for part of the Islamic studies. So the students should be able to ask this question and deal with these questions in a way that is proactive, but also that we can support. So what is the purpose? What is my purpose? Students should be able to ask that and understand it. And also all the other questions here, what is my identity as a Muslim? What does it mean? So this isn't something we say that you have to teach, kind of like proactively teach up front, or say that you're going to learn what your purpose is. The point is to create a space that they're asking the question and they're reconnecting to that as well themselves. And this is actually part of our curriculum that we have shaped out. Self-knowledge and self-worth. Where does that come from? And how do we create the space for them to have that be a part of who they are? Both in terms of confidence in themselves and their idea of who they are, self-worth, but then also to be able to understand how to respond if they're in a situation where their worth is being in some way denigrated, and how does that play a part in it as well. Okay, Lisa or Patricia, I hope you're able to give me some time frame as well, if I'm
You have 20 minutes left.
Okay, great. So yeah, and it, as simple as how people are welcome to our school, and how are they given dignity and given presence and given the welcome itself. What does that look like for them? And then of course it's part of discipline as well. When we are thinking about self-knowledge and self-worth, then we look at discipline in a way that is much more holistic. So instead of just the discipline for the sake of, response or punitive, we're talking about, a much more cohesive and inclusive way, whether it's restorative circles or restorative justice as an approach, because that dignifies the person, even if the person is doing something that is, breaking a rule, but they are still dignified. It's presented and connected to in a dignified way. So I'm going to keep going. Then if people have something you want to say in particular about any of it, then we can pause as well. This is one of my favorites, just because I live in a state of awe as much as I can. And I think it's something that we forget as we grow, and that we also forget how important it is for young people. And this is the subhanallah moment. This is the awe, the mystery, this the pure, openness to what is happening around us. And when children do it naturally, but when we start talking to them about, oh, we don't have time for that, or we start talking about, we have something else to finish, then that awe starts to get tainted, and it starts to get tamped down to a point where it's considered, well, having that reaction to something is not considered valuable. And that really disconnects young people from learning, because suddenly it's only about what, I'm learning what I have to learn about because you're telling me it's something to learn about. But when I see something and I'm excited about something, it's not, it's not valued and it's not connected to. And so therefore, when I go out into the world, I have to make sure that I, fit into whatever category I need to be in, and not just be surrounded or not just be open to what's going to be really moving me in that way. Um, and this is, some of the most prophetic teachings and prophetic examples are about being open to something that will, bring the mystery and the connection to the divine in a way that will spark everything else. So are we creating space for that? Are we taking, nature walks? Are we taking moments where it's not just, scheduled, but it's just an open time for it? Um, and then are we having them connect with each other and be able to share that? Are students sharing about what they had? I mean, I was just talking, I have a grandson who had sharing day yesterday, and he said, I don't have anything to share. I forgot to bring something to share. I said, well, do you have something you experienced that you want to share? It doesn't have to be a thing. It can be something that you felt. And so he was kind of delving into a feeling that he had or an experience he had. And the idea was, are we able to help young people think about that too, like sharing the awe and the wonder of something without it being something tangible or material? And how does that affect the way that they look at life as well, which is to say that that has a lot of meaning, just as much as anything else. And taking that time. This is one of our teachers who was teaching second grade. And I love the example because, she came up and she said, Afeefa, we're doing rocks and the unit's almost over, but the kids just want to do something else with it. Because what they wanted to do, they had found out rocks, they did all the science of rocks, they did some writing about rocks, they did all, cool stuff. But then they were on the playground and they were mashing rocks and they found powder, the rocks turned into powder. And they remembered the art teacher, Miss Nadia, had talked about how paint is made out of powder. So they came to Elmira and they said, can we make paint from these rocks? So she came to, well, we don't have time. Then resetting all of that. She said, wait a minute, this is something they wanted. They've discovered it. And so they made paint out of rocks because they made all these connections with it. And so that unit got extended, not because she, and the whole point of responding to her was to say, Elmira, this is what they are moving with. And just think about the memories you'll have. So then they made these masterpiece paintings of rock paint that we hung around the school, and that connection also was important. So yeah, so if you have something to share about something that your school has done or that you've tried to do in school or you've experienced about, oh, I would love to hear about it, and I think it would be great to share. Does anybody want to share that before we move to the next one? Or maybe you've had an awe moment or a subhanallah moment. And awe and mystery and subhanallah is also leads to transformation. And this is the other one that I wanted to touch on, transformative space. And transformative really means that it connects to something that changes, right? So if you've had an awe moment, and I think Abir was saying, that was your comment about the research showing it, it's exactly right, is that because when we leave ourselves open to it, and I'll say this very clearly, when we and yes, and I'm glad you brought that up, Brother Amar, about the curriculum. This is the thing, guys. This is the crux of it, which is if we create the space and the time, because we know that studies show, okay, thank you for bringing that up. Research shows, but also in your heart of hearts that if there is awe, which means you just walk around, just take a walk in the morning. I'm gonna make it this simple. Instead of having community meeting or morning meeting or whatever it is that you're doing in the morning, just take a walk. we do like a mindful walk exercise, but if you just take a walk with students or even going on the playground, just give them the moment and say, find something that is really exciting. Find something that's beautiful. Allah is Jamal. Can you find something that's beautiful? So many ways to do it that don't have to frustrate you with the curriculum side. Um, and if my point basically is if we don't make that time, or if you don't believe that it's important, then what's going to happen is that your curriculum may be finished, but it's that dry, riverbed that I was standing on. That's they're going to get the facts and figures. They're not going to have anything inside their hearts that makes them excited about, first of all, learning, but then also that will transform them in some way or the other. So I will keep making that case that all of this that we're talking about is not just curriculums. Let me say it like this way: it's not aside from curriculum. I'm saying let's build it into the curriculum. It's even in the way that you talk. If you walk in, I have a friend of mine, my co-founder Praveen, who was a kindergarten teacher for like 20, 30 years or so. And I would say to her, Praveen, you've taught kindergarten forever. Isn't it get boring? But you should see her. She is the kind of person that, every time she's talking about ladybugs for the, upteenth time, she goes, ladybugs, everybody, ladybugs are so exciting. She is creating all by just being excited about what she's teaching. And believe me, if you can do nothing else but be excited about what you're teaching, you're going to see a response and you're going to see a connection to it. And you don't have to be Miss Frizzle. You don't have to do all your, bells and whistles, but just walking in with a sense of awe yourself is going to make that connection to, yes, I want to also experience the world like this. I also want to be able to be connected because they already are. So even if you have to shift things around, which believe me, I know you all can do it, it's going to be important. So this transformative space also is taking something and then what do you do with it, right? And this is a core value that many of us know, which is to take knowledge, beneficial knowledge, and do something with it. It's the Sunnah, it's Quranic, whatever you want to, however you want to justify it, but the transformative aspect of knowledge and teaching is fundamental, right? And it doesn't happen without the awe. It doesn't happen without the co-participation of the student and the teacher connected together. And that it's also through the difficult times, right? How do we grow from something? So if you have to spend some time in your classroom because, kids have been, mean to each other, for example, or something's been happening, and you put aside the curriculum for a second or two and a little bit of time, and you make that connection with them, or you'd have this awe and mystery and so on and so forth, what's going to happen is that you're giving them tools to grow themselves. So if they have difficulties, if they have something going on, they are now having tools for how to engage that in a transformative way as well. And we have to give them those tools. And if you don't have them, and you may not, and it's okay, we have to seek them ourselves and understand how do we get those tools to see the world in this way so that we can also help our students do that as well. And how many quotes there are out there about it's not what you taught or what you said, it's how you made them feel, right? So if we make them feel that way. So this transformer part of it is fundamental, but it also is a lot. It's a lot of ways. It goes back to being intentional and mindful, and it's how we're able to engage everybody as well. And I think part of it is being creative. Part of it is creating a team with others that are doing this, maybe in your school or interested in it, and having it be something that you can show together as a team that this is it's going to work and it's going to be something that we can do. And this is the spirituality that we're talking about, right? And this is, for me, this is the why of why we have these schools, not because we're trying to just, have a community of Muslim children. That's great. Fantastic. But if at the end of the day, they don't know why they have this connection to the deen that is so beautiful, then I don't know what we're doing. And this is an aspect of it. So at our school, for example, one of the curriculum units that one of our Islamic studies teachers started in middle school was they actually are not just consumers of knowledge. They're creators of knowledge, and they make their own connection to knowledge. So, for example, they went through a book, Foundations of Certitude, by a scholar, and they took what he had to say and personalized it. Right. So this is transformative. They're taking knowledge and transforming it, but it's also transforming themselves. So we published this book. You can see it on Amazon, and they created this tafsir, if you will, of his book, and then connected it to experiences. So it's very basic, like it was a language arts as well, but it was part of Islamic studies and our curriculum, our standards. But it was the process piece that was exciting, and it was the idea that they're creating something and not just consuming it, and that's transformative. So I think I'm going to start wrapping up now because I know it's getting late and people are starting to have to do other things. But I wanted to just leave you with a couple of kind of, bringing the dimensions together. But then what are some of the ways that those dimensions, those aspects of that compass can be realized? One is value place-based learning. Learn about the place that your school is in. It's very basic, but learn about what are the trees' names on our school playground? What are they? How do they get there? How long have they been here? You can see after we did that, this is a note that I think the second graders did. So they wrote this note to the tree, but it's a part of learning about where you're from. Right. And then it gives them a sense that wherever they go, they are connected to that land in some way. So, well, who were the original custodians of the land that we live on? What were their tribes' names? Where did they go? But also fundamentally learning about what's around them. Cultural literacy and social justice, of course, is very important. So knowledge should be connected to the students' realities. So what's happening in their life that can come back to, and what's happening that they know about in the world as well. And that transformation means that they are a catalyst for social justice. This integration piece is very, very critical. And you're bringing these parts. I gave you, I think, a few examples of how you bring these parts together. So it's not just you're teaching math, science, history, language arts, but you're bringing those together because we know that's how students learn and how students are connected to knowledge as well. And the social emotional well-being as well is very, very critical, that we are able to understand why that's important. And this leads to positive identity, right? If we're teaching in this engaged and intentional way, we have students that are then learning to be to hold their own. Some of you might have heard this example that is one of my favorites. This middle picture here, the students in 4th and 5th grade were learning about George Washington, as they should be learning about him as the first president, but they're also learning that he was a slaveholder, and he had a certain number of enslaved people on his property. But we're also teaching that statistics have shown at least up to 30%, if not more, of enslaved people that were taken, forcibly from Africa were Muslim. So they're learning about George Washington. They're learning about the country. As cultural literacy, but they're also learning this very important fact for them as Muslims, that Muslims have been here, and they were scholars. They were people that came from, noble families, etc., that were brought here in such horrible conditions. So we're learning all of that together. So here you see a picture of, we went on a field trip to George Washington's estate. So usually people go and they put a wreath on his mausoleum, etc. But our students wanted to know where is the recognition of the enslaved people. And the only thing they could show us was a cemetery where, unmarked graves were. So we went there to the unmarked graves, and this was about 15 years ago. So it was really, really a mess. You couldn't walk there, but the docent took us there, and they knew what we do at a cemetery where Muslims are. We did Surah Fatiha. So we did Surah Fatiha for the enslaved people of George Washington's estate, that, not all of them were Muslim, but we made the dua for encompassing all of them. So now these students and these people in this picture right now are in their 30s. So this is one of our oldest cohort graduates. They're able to say to anybody that, tells them they don't belong here, no, actually, we have said a prayer for the people that were here before us and they have that connection. So it's a positive identity rather than, thinking, oh, the Muslims just came and they should go back home. No, this has been home, so on and so forth. So I think, that connection to identity and that connection to where people come from, again, knowledge of place-based learning is very critical. Here you see students that there were a lot of shootings at schools happening, and they wanted to do a walkout, and they created this themselves, and they created a justification because they were Muslim and because of our religious teachings and what we had been discussing. They had a walk to the intersection and created something very important for them to express themselves. But social justice is that critical. And it's only because, and it's, many of our parents were concerned and so on and so forth, but this is what students are doing in order to feel like they're connected to the knowledge that they're being given. And then, of course, the knowledge of struggles gets into the social justice arena as well. And how do we teach that as part of their identity as Muslims? And how do we understand that knowledge comes from heritage and others? And it's the way that we teach these things that connects knowledge to transformation, but also connects to a personal connection to how their lives are being lived. We do deep breathing. And many of the schools that I've worked with, when we bring in that emotional well-being, we bring tools, right? And these tools come from many different places, and we bring them together in order to do something positive. But then you find out actually all these tools we think are from outside and are so, some people call them new agey, whatever it is, but then you come back and you realize actually these are sunnah. And the way that the Prophet spoke, for example, was in measured tone because he was taking breaths and because he was, connected to his breath in a way that is beautiful, but we don't think of it like that. And so now when we're doing deep breathing, we're not doing it because somebody outside taught us. We're doing deep breathing because it's the sunnah and it's the way that we connect with our bodies. So a simple way of just connecting that is a way of showing that, when we pray, for example, you make sujood, if you hold it for 11 seconds, then the blood flow to your brain is such that when you get up, you're actually smarter than when you went before sujood. But it's not that we're praying because of that, but it's already embedded in that aspect of who we are. So I think I'll go ahead and wrap up now. These are our core values that we've created at this school and that we've translated for other folks as well, in order to have a more cohesive, intentional approach to everything that we do. So if somebody, for example, is not acting as they should, then administrators or teachers will say, well, which of these core values do you think that you are not upholding right now? And they are connected to that in a way that, okay, I am self-aware and I can understand that what I'm doing is not connected to that. So what are some of the things we should be doing in our schools towards religious studies that is engaged? So, of course, we have to invest in teacher training. Those of you that are trying to do this work by yourselves need support. And then there are many teachers that may not understand it and may be very concerned about, how to do this in this engaged and interactive or intentional way. So we need to help build that capacity for sure. And I think, we're also thinking about how for religious schools, for Muslim schools, how are we teaching in a way that brings in critical inquiry? What does that mean? Well, I'm thinking about how, for example, teaching about other faiths, right? Some people have a trepidation on that. But what we talk about is we want to teach authentically about other faiths in our Muslim schools, we bring in the Christian person, we bring in a Jewish person, we bring in a Hindu person to talk about the faith. And we do that because we are intentional about it. So I've had parents say, oh, no, I don't want, people from other religions talking to my children. They might convert them, right? And I've heard this, 20 years ago, and I still hear it now. But then if we're talking about our values, we're talking about our intentionality, we're talking about authenticity, then how does that jive with what we need to do in terms of how we teach our faith? So that's a big topic. I know I won't get into it, but just as an example of how when we also do interreligious education, which means we're talking and learning about other religions. How do we do it in a way that is cohesive? And we do it so that it reduces the prejudice, increases empathy, and it really builds critical thinking and inquiry skills. Not just that we're learning about another religions, but the process of learning that is really important. And it's authentic. And at the end of the day, if we're coming back to what's the why of why we have our schools, if we're not doing that, I feel that we're not really doing a service to our children. For them not to feel that they understand and not to know, and everything about another religion, but enough to be able to, excuse me, interact on it, and also enough to understand that, people from other faiths are connected to that as well. So what I'll do is I'll share more. I have these are examples that I have, but I'll send you also to a website where we have a lot of these um, more connected, what do you call them, curriculum and lesson plans and everything else on teaching specifically some of these lessons. So for example, grade 5, we teach about Qada and Qadr through this book called Winn-Dixie. Some of you might know, for us in Virginia, they learn this in 5th grade, or they have to read this in 5th grade. So this is connected to our standards of Islamic studies.
So I
And then
believe,
we
Sister
have,
Afeefa, you're going to be sending, you'll be providing me a list of resources, and they'll be sharing
yes,
out to all the registrants, inshallah, with
yes,
the links to all these wonderful resources, as well as your
inshallah.
website. I
Yes.
know we're at the top. We're now a minute over, and I'm very mindful.
Okay.
On the East
Okay.
Coast, of course, you probably are wanting to go to sleep about now. So, although
Yeah.
amazing time, I'll let maybe a minute or something if anybody has any one question or something, just to be mindful. There's a question or reflection. Um,
Yes, I can stop sharing and then we can but yes, I mean I can share with you some of these more specific lesson plans as well in terms of more granularity.
for the slides, Sister FIFA will, I think, is going to share a slim down slide deck, Sister FIFA.
Yes, I will. Yes, I
And so,
will.
yeah, whatever she provides us, we'll be sending out by the end of the week, inshallah. So I think a list of resources with some links, a slim down slide deck with the key points, as well as a recording, inshallah. We'll send it out to everybody by the end of the week, everybody who registered. And then the recording will also be made public, inshallah, on the YouTube channel within by sometime in the next few days, inshallah. This is not a class, and thank you for asking. So this is a free webinar. There's no certificate of participation for this particular one. It was public and free. We're very happy to partner with CIRE and Sister FIFA to have her, our honored guest here today, as well as Dr. Patricia, one of our board members. I think I answered everybody's questions in the chat. So yes, Sister Patricia, do you want to, or Sister Viva, final comments? Dr. Patricia, a final dua? Get a final thing from both of you.
You go, Sister people, you go first. Whatever you want to say.
Oh no, I was just gonna thank everybody for your time and sharing through whatever energy you put out there through our internets. We appreciate it. Alhamdulillah. Allah yabarak fikum.
Space nice and message.
All right, so Dr. Patricia.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Thank you again, Sister Afeefa. This has been wonderful. It was just so. I like the way you went through the steps and give this and that main question is giving the students space to ask the questions, to feel safe in asking the questions, and understand that it's okay for them to have questions. So I really appreciate hearing that. It's so important. It's so important for us to know that as educators. All right. So thanks everyone for joining us. It's been a wonderful experience, as I expected it to be. Alhamdulillah. Thank you. And I'm going to do a closing dua with from a book called The Whispers, and it's going to be in English. So I'll just do a closing dua in English. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. O Allah, make me such that I thank you greatly for your blessings. I remember you much. I follow your counsel and I preserve your commands. O Allah, our hearts, our foreheads, and our limbs are in your hand. You did not give us total control over any of them. Since you have done that with these, then be their patron and guide us to the path of rectitude. Amen. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Successful week.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.